Okay, now we're going to look at this problem. As always, pause the video, read the problem, and then restart the video. So this is what I call a mixture problem. A mixture problem, basically you have different things and you're mixing them together. Now before we start this, there's one complicated part of this that I think I should explain ahead of time. So imagine that you have a container, and inside the container you have some marbles. And suppose that some of them are blue, and suppose that the rest of them are red. Now, this is not a perfect picture of it, but some are blue and some are red. Now, suppose that you know that 20% of them are blue, and suppose you also know that you have a total of 20 marbles altogether. Now, think about a table here. Suppose our first column is the total. The second column is the percent, and the third column is the total that are blue. Well, there's 20 total. The percent that are blue is 20%. And if we take 20% of 20, that is 0.2 times 20. And 0.2 times 20 is 4. That means there are 4 blue marbles. The point is this. If you take the total that you have and multiply it by the percent that is a certain thing, like being blue, that will tell you the total that you have that are just blue. We're going to need this idea to solve this problem. So let's do the actual problem now, and kind of keep in the back of your head that idea that I just told you. So if you read the problem, it tells you that you need something. What you need is 500, hit the wrong thing here. What you need is 500 milliliters of something called oxazepam. I think I'll just call it Oxa. You need 500 milliliters of something that is 20% Oxa. But you don't have any 20% Oxa stuff. You have a 5% solution and you have a 25% solution. So how are you going to make from those two a solution that is 20% Oxa? So here's the idea. You've got a 5% solution. Basically, what that means is this much of it is Oxa, and the rest of it is maybe something like water. Just that little tiny 5% of it is Oxa. And then you have another solution that's 25%. So this one has a lot more Oxa in it. It's 25% Oxa, and the rest is water. You're supposed to take some of this and some of that and pour it together into a new place. And when you pour them together, it's going to be more than 5%, but it's going to be less than 25% because you're mixing these and you're trying to get it to be exactly 20%. And not only that, but you want to have a total of 500 milliliters. So how do we solve this problem? Well, I'm going to call the amount that we're going to use of the 5% x. I'm going to call the amount that we're going to use of the 25% y. And that's what we're being asked for, actually. How much of this one and how much of that one would we mix together? And then I'm going to make a table similar to the table for the first problem. Now, if you remember the thing I told you about the marbles, we had total, we had percent, and then we had total blue. Well, this is the same idea. The total amount that we're going to use, this one, is going to be x. The total amount we're going to use of this one is going to be y, and the total amount we want to end up with is 500. So we'll have that there. The percent of this that's oxa is 5%. The percent of this that's oxa is 25%. And the percent of this that's oxa is 20%. Now, the last column is the total oxa, kind of like the total number of marbles that would have been in there if the number of marbles was a certain percent. And as I mentioned a moment ago, before I started the actual problem, the idea is you multiply these two columns and it's got to give you the third column. So right here, what goes in there is going to be 5% of whatever x is. 5% as a decimal is 0.05 or 0.05. And 5% of x you get by multiplying that by x. So this becomes 0.05x. By the same reasoning, this becomes 0.25y. And my last column is, or my last spot right here, that is 20% of 500. Again, you're just multiplying the two other numbers in the row. So that's 0.20 times 500. And if you do the math, that is 100. Okay, now if you think about it, you're mixing X milliliters of this with X milliliters of that, and you're getting a total of 500. Sorry, that's Y milliliters, excuse me. So that means if you add the X and the Y, you'll get 500, and that's one of my equations. X plus Y equals 500. And if you think about the marble thing, if you have this many blue marbles in the first one and this many blue marbles in the second one, then this would be the total number of blue marbles. To make a long story short, we're going to say 0.5x, 0.05x that is, plus 0.25y is equal to 100. Those are the two equations that we need to solve. Keep in mind, x is the amount in the 5% the amount of the 5% solution that we need to use, and that was one of the things being asked for. And y is the amount of the 25% solution that we need to use, and that's the other thing being asked for. So we're going to solve this system of equations. Now I'm going to do a optional step, but some people like it a lot or prefer this to doing it the other way. I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to multiply both sides of it by 100. In case you're not, well, I'll tell you in a second why we're doing that. Let me copy it down first. So multiplying both sides by 100. The 100, by the way, has nothing to do with the fact that there's 100 there. That's just coincidence. When you multiply a number by 100, it moves the decimal point 2 places. So that turns this into 5x. That turns this into 25y. And that's the reason for doing it. Now there's no decimal. And on the other side, I'm going to get that, which is 10,000. While I'm at it, since all those numbers are divisible by 5, I'm going to divide them all by 5 to make things easier. And my equation is going to be x plus 5y equals 2,000. So that's one of my equations. The other equation, let me scroll back up, is x plus y equals 500. So that's my other equation, x plus y equals 500. And then we're going to solve this system of equations. I will do that by copying this one down. That's going to give me x plus 5y equals 2,000. I'm going to take this one, I'm going to multiply it by -1. That's going to make it negative x minus y equals negative 500. The reason I'm multiplying it by -1 is I want to get these two terms to be opposites so that they're going to cancel in a moment. So now we're going to add them together and see they cancel. Those cancel. These, when I add them, give me 4y. And these, when I add them up, give me 1,500. Then, of course, we divide both sides by 4 to get the answer for y. And y is equal to 375. Now, all we need to do is figure out what x is. We can plug 375 into any one of our equations to get the x. This seems like about the easiest equation to use. So I'm going to use that. So I'm going to take the x plus y equals 500 equation. I will plug 375 in for y, getting x plus 375 equals 500. Subtract 375 from both sides, I get 125. That's my answer for x. So keep those numbers in mind. 375 for y, 125 for x. Remember, y was the amount of the 25% solution. So we're going to use 375 milliliters. And remember, x, that was the amount of the 5% solution. And so we're going to use 125 milliliters of that. And those are your two answers.